Good morning and welcome to our missions message, and welcome you friends to our mission blogs. This morning a word of encouragement. Nehemiah 8 verses 10. The joy of the Lord is your strength. The joy of the Lord is your and my strength. Not but by our power, but by the Spirit, says the Lord. Not by our power, but by the Spirit of the Lord. Where am I going with this? The joy of the Lord is our strength. Well, I think there's no better person, apart from Jesus, of course. The great Saint Apostle Paul can talk about joy, and he can rightly talk about joy. Philippians 4 verses 4. Be joyful always, I say rejoice. Paul said in Philippians 4. Be joyful always, I say rejoice. That is my message for you today. A message of encouragement. Joyfulness comes from an inner conviction of our salvation and peace with God. That joy, the joy of gladness. Now we can only be joyful and glad in this pandemic situation if we have Jesus in our lives. Because if we are born again Christians, automatically the Holy Spirit is our inner strength, our joy and our gladness. Now think about this. Paul was in the ministry for 20 years. For 20 years, Paul worked hard at missionary and evangelism. There is no better person apart from Jesus than Apostle Paul that can truly witness to a joyful spirit. Can you imagine? He was imprisoned, he was flogged, he was stoned, he was hit, he was taunted, he was persecuted, and he wrote most of his epistles from a jail cell. So here's the thing. Most of his letters in the New Testament he wrote from lockdown. Lockdown in house arrest or lockdown in a prison. So we can, metaphorically speaking, taking a lot of leaves or pages out of the book of Paul, out of all of his books. But for me, the epistle of joy is the book of Philippians, the Philippians. Paul was showing his gratitude towards his generosity, and Paul were reminding them of the good news of grace and the truth and justification in Jesus, but not in the old ceremonial law. It's really a book to go and read. But keep in mind, when you read this letter of joy, Philippians, keep in mind where he was coming from. Imprisonment, lockdown. So I must be honest with you, lately this whole situation, the extension of lockdown and the future of this pandemic doesn't look good at this stage. And I was nearly getting a bit depressed and discouraged. And before I wanted to throw a self-pity party, I went into the scriptures and I dug deep, and I was just looking at the life of Paul in the book of Acts. And I read a bit of book of Acts on Paul's missionaries and all the mishaps that happened to him, like the snake bite, the shipwreck, the beating, all of that. Paul didn't have an easy life. He was a true martyr for God. But Paul knew where his strength was coming from. Paul knew where his strength was coming from. And we have to tap into Jesus Christ and the power and the strength of the Holy Spirit all this time. I know for some it's more difficult. There are some that has to put together a business plan. Some of you, your own businesses is in a compromised situation. Your budgets are compromised. Your situation is compromised. You've got a lot of challenges. And you look at this future and you think where, how, and why. I want to encourage you today. God is in control. The same God that got Paul through his missionary trips and through his calling will get you through with your life. And remember, Paul in his last days were beheaded. You were executed by the Caesar at that time. What a terrible way to die. So, you know what? Instead of a self-pity party during lockdown or coming out of lockdown and facing all these challenges and problems in the future to put our lives together, instead of a self-pity party, I want to throw a party of praise and a party of joy and a party of gladness as we go into the future. Because Paul had all the reasons to get depressed and to throw in the ropes, etc., etc. But God provided for Paul. God provided finance through his little churches. God provided him a way of passage. God gave him strength. God gave him wisdom. And he persevered. So take from this story of Saint Paul that wrote a lot of the New Testament. I want to leave you with a big 5 P's of Paul's life that we can learn of. The big 5 P's. The first one, prayer. Paul was a man of prayer. Paul was a man of prayer. Most important in our journey. And then Paul was a man of passion. He had such passion for his friends, for his little churches that he planted, his missionary churches, for his calling, passion. Please, you must have passion for your loved ones, your vision, your business, your future. And also, Paul was a man of praise, even in difficult situations. He was always a man of praise, praising God for what he has. And then he was a man of perseverance. He was a man of perseverance. Paul didn't give up. He carried on. He had his eyes on the finish line. And then persistence, the last piece. So it's prayer, passion, praise, perseverance, and the last one, persistence. Now we have to persist. We have to persist with faith, hope, and love. And in that, we must be joyful. We must draw on the strength and the wisdom from above in the Holy Spirit. Stay strong, stay joyful, and if you do not know the Lord of joy and the Holy Spirit of gladness, I challenge you to invite Jesus Christ into your life after this. Goodbye.